Good morning again, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the meeting of the NSDP committee to order. The date being Thursday, May 27th, 2021. Hopefully you all had a chance to review the minutes of our last meeting. With that being said, if there's no questions or comments related to the minutes, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Anthony, second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the meetings of the March 25th meeting. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Great. The minutes have been approved. Thank you so much. Alex, presentation item.
Yep, thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen here and walk you through a little presentation. And I feel like I'm definitely foreshadowing our agenda for today. So if you've had an opportunity to look at the agenda items, you're going to see that we are making a recommendation, excuse me, for a construction manager at risk project. And I'm going to kind of walk you through a presentation that's just going to kind of give an overview of all of our procurement options, and then give an explanation for why we're making the recommendation to move into our very first construction manager at risk project. So some of you may find this presentation a little familiar. I went back to look at my notes, and we actually did a similar presentation back in September of 2016 as we were building towards our Operation Fix-It projects. And at that time, we were kind of making the case for why we should begin using design build. So just to kind of at its basic, so there are essentially 4 procurement options that we have available to us as a public entity for construction work. And so I've kind of drawn that dashed line horizontally, with below the line being those very traditional bid projects. So we call them design, bid, build. And then above the dashed line are the 2 newer procurement options that we have available to us now, which are design, build, and construction manager at risk. And they are both what we call best value selection, or that BVS, where we're looking at a combination of both qualifications and price. And so then this is a chart that kind of just really starts to walk you through how these 4 different procurement methods, they certainly have a lot of overlap. Some of them even have quite a bit of similarities, but just a general decision-making chart in terms of why you might use one versus the other. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I think in the right application, any of these procurement methods could work, but just generally speaking, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way kind of counterclockwise. So as project complexities are very low, those projects are going to make more sense for multiple prime or design build. And as project complexity starts to slide to the right towards that higher level of complexity, general contracting and construction manager at risk are going to make more sense. And then moving to the right side, looking at owner decisiveness. So if there is a single point of contact, so that's how we would define decisiveness. So the ability for the owner to quickly make those high level decisions. So if there is a high ability for the owner to be more decisive, design, build, and construction manager at risk are going to make more sense. Whereas if the owner is more committee-based or needs to go back to review individual decisions, that multiple prime or general contracting method is going to make more sense. And that really has to do with the amount of time spent in design, and also just the general speed of the process. So those bid projects, those design, bid, build are going to be slower, more linear processes. And design, build, and CMR are going to be much more expedited with more overlap in those phases. And then at the top of the screen, looking at project size. So those smaller projects will make more sense in design, build, or multiple prime. And then those larger projects, both in terms of their complexity as well as their value, their dollar value, are going to make more sense in the CMR model or general contractor. And then on the left side, looking at schedule importance. So if schedule is not a priority, those bid processes, multiple prime and general contractor will make more sense. And if schedule is really driving the project, design, build, and CMR are going to start to make more sense. And then now just looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of the methods. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. It really kind of comes down to which one makes the most sense. So when we look at multiple prime in the advantages category, and I'm just kind of highlighting some of the ones that stick out to me the most. So I think multiple prime is probably what is the most familiar. So it is that bid process that everybody, I think, remembers well. It also is going to have a fully designed project scope. So that very linear process means that the architect or engineer is going to take that project 100% through design and then put it out for bids. And so you have that very fully designed or defined scope of work. It is going to have the lowest initial price. And so that is one of its attributes. It is also sometimes one of its detractors because it does sometimes sacrifice quality for price. So then looking at the disadvantages for multiple prime, so that same linear process that gets you a very defined price for that scope also means that it takes longer. There is no design or cost input from the contractor. So our design team is going to work in complete isolation from contractors. And so there is some downside to that in terms of the potential for errors. And just by the nature of it being a multiple prime setup where there are multiple prime contractors who are going to be working on delivering that project, it can be adversarial in nature. So when you hear about claims on projects, many of those are coming out as a result of multiple prime contracting. So then when we move to general contracting, the pros and cons are very similar to multiple prime. So it's familiar. It will have that fully defined project scope. One big difference is that because it is a single contractor, it is easier to manage. There is one single general contractor who is responsible for coordinating all the other subcontractors. The disadvantages are very much the same as well, though. So that very sequential process means that it has a longer schedule. There's no design or cost input from the contractor. But one differentiator from multi-prime is that there are higher levels of bonding requirements. So in multi-prime, where you would have at least 5 contractors, prime contractors who would each bond their own work. In general contracting, you will have one general contractor responsible for bonding the entire project. So that will preclude some of the smaller vendors from participating in that bid process. And then when we look at construction manager at risk, so the advantages are we, for the first time, have contractor input on design. So construction manager at risk is similar to design bid build in that there is a separate architect and or engineering team that's working on design, but they get to do that with the benefit of input from the CMR, the construction manager at risk. And I'll get into a little more detail on that in some of the upcoming slides. Selection of that contractor is based on both qualifications and price. It is also a faster project delivery method, and that's because that construction manager is getting to look at that project and provide that input during the design process. In general, this is a good project, a good procurement method for those large or complex or schedule-driven projects. On the downside, there will be increased risk for the contractor. So when we talk about in the bid process, there is a defined scope of work. There is less definition in construction manager at risk. And so there is inherently going to be some contingencies to make sure the CMR is able to deliver that project at their guaranteed maximum price. On the flip side too of the bid process, so it can be more difficult to determine if the best price has been achieved. And so again, remembering it's a best value selection versus a low bid award. And then there can also still be disputes if the guaranteed maximum price scope is not clearly defined. And then when we look at design build, one of its main advantages is that it is that true single point of responsibility for both design and construction. The contractor selection, just like CMR, is both a combination of qualifications and price. So it's that best value selection. It is the fastest project delivery method because of that single point of responsibility and the ability to make expedited decisions. And as a result of that single point of responsibility, there should not be change orders, or there won't be change orders for errors and omissions. There can be change orders for other items, but not for design errors and omissions because the design builder is responsible for both the design and for the construction. Some of the downsides to design build is that the owner does have less control over selecting the designer because that architect or engineer is going to work directly for the design builder. The owner has less input on details. As the owner, we do have the opportunity to put together a criteria that will guide the project, but some of those more granular decisions will be made by the design builder and not by us as the owner. Likewise, to CMR, it can be difficult to determine if the best price has been achieved because it is that best value selection. And changes can be difficult and expensive if that criteria does not clearly delineate what the requirements of the project are. Those change orders can be very difficult to negotiate. So now I just kind of want to show you graphically an overview of each of those procurement options. And I've just kind of put some highlight on this screen to point out. So in a teal circle, you're going to see the owner pointed out just to kind of clearly show you the lines of communication and lines of responsibility. So in that very traditional multi-prime setup, the owner kind of sits at the middle with a dedicated contract with an architect or engineer. And that architect or engineer is going to be based on qualifications-based selection, or QBS. And then you see following down from the owner are those multiple prime contractors. So in a new construction or a major renovation, there would be at least 5 multiple prime contractors. And this is, again, that design, bid, build. General contracting is very similar, with the one big difference that I've highlighted in the red dots, which is that general contractor. So now instead of the owner hiring 5 multiple prime contractors, the owner hires 1 general contractor, and that general contractor is responsible for subcontracting out all of those other scopes of work. And you see just a large number of what the possible subcontractors would be. And again, this is still design, bid, build. So now we're going to, and you'll have to forgive me, I've changed the order just a little bit because I wanted to move through these in the order of familiarity. So we've been using design build almost exclusively on our HVAC projects as part of Operation Fix-It. So again, you see us as the owner circled in that teal oval. In this case, instead of having an architect or engineer, we have a criteria architect, or in the case of the HVAC projects, a criteria engineer. Much like with the bid process, that engineer is hired through a qualifications-based selection, or QBS. And now instead of hiring a general contractor or multiple prime contractors, we hire a design builder. And you'll notice again in the red dashes that huge difference, which is that so that architect and or engineer no longer works for us as the owner. They work for the design builder. And I know that's built into the name, design build, but I do feel like it's a huge differentiator we have to keep reminding ourselves of. And that is also why we also cede a lot of that control, because that designer no longer works directly for us as the owner. But on the upside, it results in less risk to us as the district. It gives us faster delivery. And so you see in this case, the design builder is still responsible for subcontracting out for all those trades work to be able to complete the work. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see best value selection underlined. So that is how we make that decision of which design builder we hire for the project. And then following those green arrows on the left side of your screen. So one big differentiator with design build from the bid process is the guaranteed maximum price, or the GMP. And this is one thing that we have taken a slightly unconventional approach in our design build projects, where a GMP would typically be negotiated after the project has been awarded. So we would allow the design builder time to fully flesh out the design of that project. And then we would negotiate a GMP working in conjunction with our criteria engineer. We have taken the approach that we spend more time in the selection for that best value selection, and we make our selection based on the GMP at selection. And I think that has worked out well for us. While our HVAC projects are complex, they're also pretty easy to define the requirements for them upfront. And so that's something that our design builder community seems to become very familiar with, and pretty aggressive and able to meet our requirements and also our budgets. And then again, just that reminder. So the second green arrow you see there on the left. So subcontractors go through a pre-qualification process. So they are pre-qualified. They then also provide bids to our design builder, and that is all based on open book pricing. And then finally, that takes us to our construction manager at risk model. And there are a lot of similarities to design build, but I would call it more of a hybrid between design build and that more traditional bid process. So again, you'll see us as the owner circled in that teal. One major difference you're going to see is that that architect and engineer role reverts back to being a direct line of communication, a direct contract to us as the owner. So that architect or engineer is going to be hired based on qualifications-based selection. And Kurt will walk you through that here a little bit later in our agenda when we go through our recommendations on contracts. So direct relationship with the owner and the architect engineer. And now a direct relationship between the owner and the construction manager at risk. But in terms of the selection for that construction manager at risk, it is nearly identical to design build. So again, this is a best value selection. So we ask those construction managers to submit their qualifications, and then we also put them through a proposal phase. Now, one big differentiator between design build and construction manager at risk, especially for the way our projects are going to roll forward. So we're still making that best value selection. So we're evaluating that construction manager based on their qualifications and their proposal, but their proposal is only going to be a very small portion of the total contract amount because they cannot give us a GMP, that guaranteed maximum price on the value of the work, because we have not even begun design work yet. And yet, part of the merits of construction manager at risk are that we want our engineer in this case to be able to design with the input of our construction manager. So our construction manager is going to take on that more traditional role that you probably are familiar with for a construction manager. So they are going to provide all pre-construction services. So they are going to do all of our estimating. So as our engineer is working through designs, our construction manager is going to do the estimating. They will be doing schedules. So making sure that we are able to meet the schedule requirements for the projects. They will also provide constructability reviews. They will be assisting with making sure that we can procure materials. I don't think it's any secret that we're seeing a lot of fluctuation in the markets right now and some real difficulty with logistics and getting our hands on materials. So having that insight from our construction manager to make sure that we are able to source the materials, the equipment that we need to be able to execute those projects is going to be invaluable. And then as we complete design or become nearly complete with design, we are then going to negotiate a guaranteed maximum price with the construction manager. And we will then need to come back and amend their contract to be able to enter into the construction phase of the project. So again, those two green arrows on the left side of your screen, those big differentiators, that guaranteed maximum price, that is going to happen at some point in the future. But again, those subcontractors are going to be hired much the same way as in design build. So they're going to be pre-qualified. They will then bid to the CMR. It will be open book pricing. And those subcontractors will be managed fully by the construction manager. So I think the big question now is why construction manager at risk and why now? And this is some very new information that has very much changed our focus and what we've been working on here over the past several months. So at the beginning of this year, we were getting ready to essentially wind down our Operation Fix It work and get the last of our contracts ready for summer of 2021. And many of you may be familiar with the federal stimulus funds that have flowed to schools. And so our opportunity there is called the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, or ESSER. And in our case, through our ESSER 2, which is the second round of those relief funds, our district has the opportunity to fund HVAC upgrades. And so you might remember that we've had the discussion that while we were very thankful to have the opportunity to invest $125 million in our K-12 facilities as part of our Operation Fix It initiative, it was not enough funds to take care of all of our needs. And it certainly was not enough to take care of all of our HVAC needs across our district. So even at the completion of Operation Fix It, we will have 16 buildings that still have not seen HVAC upgrades. And so the district has now made the commitment of $44 million of those ESSER 2 relief funds to provide those very similar HVAC upgrades at 16 additional schools, which is an amazing opportunity for our district. At this point next year, well, at the tail end of summer next year, when we are completing this work. So this is all work that is planned for summer of 2022. For the first time in our district's history, the plan is we will have every one of our classrooms air conditioned. So that's a big milestone that we're looking forward to. But this still doesn't answer the kind of why CMR and why now. So as we look at what's happening in the market right now. Again, I don't think this is any secret or mystery, but we're seeing a lot of market factors that give us some concern in terms of being able to execute the work. So having $44 million of funds to invest in HVAC upgrades is going to roughly double our investment over the past 4 years. So we wanted to be able to look at opportunities where we could kind of spread that, that contracting pool wider than we have in the past. And so CMR is one way to do that. So when we look at our past requests for qualifications for design build, we've not seen much to any interest from our construction manager teams. So Kurt will get into those details, but we've seen tremendous response from our construction manager teams. And so I think that gives us some ability to kind of not have all our eggs in one basket. And it may also give us some opportunity to get interested subcontractors who perhaps were not interested in working with our design build teams. And then there's also a strategy factor to this. So in a future NSDP, we will do some updates on our district's facility master plan work, but that's an effort that is ongoing right now. And it is fully my expectation that as we move into facility master plan work again, and when we're able to build another new facility, based on the feedback and the reports I've seen from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, they're seeing the vast majority of the volume of their new construction work moving to the construction manager at risk model. And so I think there's a huge advantage to our team here in capital improvements at Columbus City Schools to make sure that we gain familiarity with construction manager at risk before we're ready to build a new building. And so I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to learn our way through CMR. It also gave us an opportunity, which was pretty neat, to get to see all the CMR, the construction manager teams in town who were interested in pursuing this work. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks for that. You answered my question at that last slide. Almost verbatim, I was thinking, why now? Okay, so that makes a whole lot of sense. Folks, do you have any questions or comments to make?
I thought that was a great presentation, Alex. It was clear. I have a much better understanding of it now. And yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you much. Let's continue on with the agenda. We get into action items.
Excellent. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kurt Keaton, and he will present item 4.01 for you.
Morning, Kurt.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. So we'll get started here. Can everybody see that? Yeah. All righty. We're going to get started here with the criteria engineer for phases 12, 13, and 14. So first here we have our agenda. So here's the copy of the advertisement that was in the dispatch on the 29th and April 5th. It has some dates and times, and then the link to the info session. This is the MBE advertisement for criteria, and then our district website. This was the RFQ that was sent out to the interested firms with some tentative dates and roughly when the criteria would need to be complete for the phases that we listed. And we did mention the federal ESSER funding at the bottom there also. Here is the agenda for the info meeting. Again, just submission information, deadlines, instructions, and again, as far as the scope, kind of an overview of how many sites we think and about the square footage, and again, the criteria package due dates. So here was the sign-in sheet. So we had really good interest, which was great to see. Next up is the statement of qualifications from the selected firm, which was AEC and their team that they put together. And then here is the breakdown for the firms that we scored. The shortlist being Advanced Engineering Consultants, Kramer Engineers, and Star Consultants. The shortlist selection letter, which has, of course, the firms that had the RFQ, and then the shortlisted firms. Here's our interview score sheet. We all chose Advanced Engineering Consultants. Here is one of the regrets letter that was sent out to the non-winning firms, and then the congrats letter to AEC. Here is the legislation, the dollar amount being $845,000, and again, the budget funding coming from those ESSER 2 funds. Here is the working contract. And lastly, we have the LEDE. They committed to the 20%, and we have this, I'm sorry, 90%, 20% on the front there, but they've committed to 90% LEDE participation and has been approved by Terry Wise. Do we have any questions?
I'm going to jump in really quick. So I apologize. I should have given you a little more background information in terms of how we are planning this work to be able to actually execute it. So just to try to keep things neatly ordered for us. So our HVAC projects through Operation Fix It stop or complete with phase 10, which will be under construction this summer. So we've chosen just to continue numbering them sequentially. So as part of this ESSER 2 funding, our HVAC projects are currently numbered 11, 12, 13, and 14. And so our recommendation is to move forward with phases 12, 13, and 14, continuing in design build. So we're recommending peeling off roughly a quarter of the total volume of the work and running it through the CMR procurement, which you'll see just a little bit later in the presentation. And then about 3/4 of it maintaining design build in these phases 12, 13, and 14 that you see as part of this contract. So I hope that provides some context for you.
Thanks, Alex. Anybody have any questions?
One other piece of background I'll provide for you as well. So one differentiator in this work from our previous work, since the funding that is being used is federal funding, for the first time, we will have prevailing wage requirements on these projects. So we've tried to be very transparent and clear for all of our interested vendors. It doesn't really impact the professional services side, but obviously it will impact the construction side. And one of those requirements is that our district will also need to be able to provide prevailing wage coordinator services. And so this contract also includes those services contracted on behalf of the district.
All right, team, does anyone have any questions or comments of Kurt? And Kurt, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
None? Okay. Alex, in terms of approving item 4.01, we've got 3 projects. Do you want to approve those projects independently?
So my recommendation, so this will be one contract. Within it, we will have line items so that we can cost account for each of them. But this is one contract, so I'd recommend taking it as one piece of legislation as it's one contract. When we come through with the design build firms, it will be 3 separate contracts. And at that point, we would award them separately.
Okay, how would you want it worded in terms of the approval of the contract? Because you got 3 numbers. You want to go action item 4.01 and the date? So,
yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, guys, thank you. If you don't have any questions or comments, I'd like to have a motion to approve item 4.01 for the May 27th, 2021 agenda. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Anthony?
motion. Thanks, Anthony. Second,
Second, Bob Lichty.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded to approve action item 4.01. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Approved. Thank you much.
All right, that will take us to item 4.02. And this is award of a contract for engineering of record services to M Consultants, doing business as M Engineering. And this is for phase 11. So this is engineer record services for a construction manager at risk project. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kurt.
All right, thank you, Alex. So as Alex said, this is for the engineer of record for our construction manager at risk phase. So here we go with the copy of the advertisement. So I'd just like to point out, we do have, you'll see engineer of record and one construction manager at risk. Alex's presentation did a great job of kind of showing how those two entities kind of have to be together at the same time and start the process. So that was our goal here. So you'll see this exact same thing when we get to the construction manager item also. So this was ran in the dispatch on March 29th and April 5th. Same thing for Ohio MBE, and then also on our district website. This was the RFQ that was put out. So it did give a brief description of what the project would entail and the sites, and a little brief history kind of on those sites. And then at the bottom there, we had a scope of services kind of overview also. So this is the informational meeting agenda, where again, we went over deadline dates, submission instructions, and again, a kind of overview of scope and facilities. So here was the sign-in sheet. Again, we had pretty good, what's the word I'm looking for here? Support, I guess, from the community here, which was nice to see. And so next we have our statement of qualifications for the selected firm, which was M Engineering. And again, their team they've put together with Core and Leggett Architects. So up next is the scoring breakdown for all the firms, and then the shortlisted firms, which happen to be Karpinski Engineering, M Engineering, and Kramer Engineers. This again is the shortlist selection letter, showing all the firms there, and then of course our shortlisted firms. Here is the interview score sheet for the engineer of record. Again, we have a regrets letter to one of the firms, Karpinski, and then a congrats letter to M Engineering. Up next is the legislation with the dollar amount of $704,147.90. The budget source again being the ESSER 2 funding. Up next, we have the working contract. And finally, the LEDE form with a 20% LEDE participation. And signed by Terry. And that will do it for that one. Any questions?
Okay, guys, if there's no questions or comments, I'd like to have a motion to approve project 22001.
I'll move to approve. This is Scott.
Okay, Scott, thank you.
Second, Bob Lutke.
Been moved and seconded to approve project 22001. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thanks again, Kurt. Project 22001 has been approved.
Thank you.
All right, so I will move on to 4.03, and I'm going to ask you to remember construction manager at risk for 4.07. And I apologize if we made this confusing, but as Kurt mentioned, so we actually sent out a request for qualifications at the exact same time for both the engineer of record and the construction manager for the CMR project. However, because of the way things timed out, the construction manager at risk contract will not go to the June 1st board meeting. It will go to the June 15th board meeting. So we're going to be presenting it to you today as well, but we put it at the tail end of the agenda just to make it clear for our board which pieces are coming to them at their next board meeting. So the CM contract is 4.07, but now we'll move on to 4.03, which is award of a general contract to Vasco Asphalt Company doing business as Vasco Sports Contractors. And Lori will pick this one up, and this will be for replacement of running tracks at Eastmore Academy and Whetstone High School.
Thank you, Alex. Excuse me. This was our advertisement that ran in the dispatch on the 29th of April and the 6th of May. This is our ad for Ohio MBE. This is the ad that was on our website, noting the location, the estimate of upgrades, which was $812,504, and a list of for our Zoom meeting pre-bid. This was the agenda. These were the attendees, mostly the engineering company. This is a very specialized form of construction. We had one bidder, Vasco Asphalt Company, doing business as Vasco Sports Contractors, and the number was $809,000. This is Osborne's recommendation letter. This is the legislation to award a contract to Vasco for $809,000. Our budget source is sale of real estate, buildings funds. This is the contract. This is their LADE participation form. They are committing to 20%. And Terry has approved it. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Lori. I have a question.
Sure.
With that one bid received, are there any additional actions to try to get an additional bid? I think out of the total, it was roughly maybe 5 or so companies that responded.
When you look at, go backwards, at the pre-bid, excuse me, most of the attendees were from the engineering company that did the drawings. There was only one bidder that showed up for the pre-bid. This is an extremely specialized form of paving, and that it's a sports surface. So it's companies that, this company specializes in running tracks and tennis courts, basically playing surfaces. So it's very specialized, and they do this all over the country.
Thank you.
Good question, Erica. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve project 21005. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thanks, Lori. Project has been approved.
All right, thank you. From there, we'll move on to item 4.04. And I'm just noticing too, I guess I should have realized this myself, but so I think this will be the first time in our history anyways, that in one agenda, we'll have contracts representing design build, construction manager at risk, and a traditional bid project. So pretty exciting day as well on that note. And maybe what makes items 4.04 and 4.05 all the more exciting as well. So these are traditional bid projects, and I'll have Lori explain both of them for you. But these two contracts represent the tail end. So these are the very last Operation Fix-It contracts that we have to put in place. So once we've completed construction on our summer work, this will represent the completion of our Operation Fix-It projects. Take it away, Lori.
So one of our fix-it categories was electrical upgrades, lighting upgrades, and that's what these two projects are. We're relamping all of the fluorescent fixtures with LED lamps. So this was the ad. While it's two projects, we ran them simultaneously because it's the exact same bit of work. We just split them between the regions. So the first package is regions 1, 2, and 3, and the second package is 4, 5, and 6. This ad ran on the 6th of April and the 13th of April in the dispatch. This is the ad that ran in Ohio MBE. This is the ad that was on our website, including our Zoom meeting. The estimate for this particular phase was $605,000. This was our pre-bid meeting agenda. This was our pre-bid attendees. We had a lot of contractors interested in this. It's a relatively simple project. We are bidding labor because AEP cut us a deal on light bulbs. We paid a penny a piece for them. For I think about 100,000 bulbs. In the case of this one, MAC Engineering Services was our second low, actually. Our first low, energy efficient equipment, withdrew their bid because of a math error. But MAK Engineering Services was low at $467,918, which was more than 22% below estimate. This is Evolve's withdrawal letter. This is the legislation. Again, our source of funds is both Operation Fix-It and our $500,000 maintenance fund for the facility master plan buildings that exist. We are relamping some of our newer buildings to make them more energy efficient. This is our working contract. This is their LED e-form where they are committing to 90% participation. And this is Terry's sign off. Are there any questions?
Lori, I'm just going to add in a little more background because I think it's important. These contracts also really represent a real partnership between our capital improvements team with our maintenance team, or buildings and grounds. So we both have the need to do sometimes very similar work. We have our own discrete sources of funding, which don't always lend themselves to contracting together. But we did not see the value in having each of us running our own projects. And so essentially we are going to be running this project for our buildings and grounds team, as well as for ourselves, because it is, like Lori indicated, it's the exact same scope of work. It's just for different buildings, but the results will be the same. And these are great projects for our district. We'll see increased lighting levels. We'll see more consistent color temperatures in our buildings. So if you've walked into one of our buildings and you've seen lamps that are, some are brighter than others, some are more orange or whitish bluish than others, this will really set a basic threshold in every building, so we won't see any of that anymore. And it will also reduce our electric bill, which is great as well.
I don't know if you guys noticed that when Lori was giving the presentation, she took a few deep breaths. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that she had to go out and count all the lamps. How many were there?
One building had, I want to say, like 35,000 light bulbs in it.
Wow.
And just the 4 foot long, your standard 4 foot long T8 fixed bulbs are about 30,000 in one and 25,000 in the other. Plus we did a conditions assessment, and in some buildings we are actually replacing light fixtures. The big one that comes to mind is in West High School. There are almost 500 light fixtures in the corridors that are in poor condition, and we are replacing those fixtures and relamping them at the same time.
Wow. Well, I appreciate your work and your counting ability. So thanks for all of that. Are there any questions or comments of Lori? Okay. Great. Being that there are two projects with the same number, what I'd like to do is approve them by groups as they're stated in the agenda. So I like to.
Curtis, let me,
Yeah.
if you're going to do that, let me present the other one. Because they actually, while they're two different contractors.
Okay, if you don't mind. Well,
No
we could
problem.
just do this at group one, whatever, however you want to do it is fine. Okay,
Lori, why don't, I would recommend we handle it individually. And so this would be 21004 group one,
Group
and
one.
then 4.05 would be 21004 group two. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, that's exactly how I was going to do it, Alex, so that there's a record of approval for individuals. Okay,
Perfect.
great. Thank you, guys. With that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve project 21004, group one.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve project 21004, group one. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Been approved. Thanks, Lori.
No problem.
All right, well, 4.05 is going to sound very familiar, but just to kind of reiterate that for everybody. So there is the same project number, because when we initiated this work, we didn't necessarily have any thoughts on how we would procure it necessarily. But as Lori and team got to counting and quickly ran out of fingers and toes, realized that this was probably a very aggressive project for any one contractor to tackle. And so the decision was made, I think, very wisely to split it into two groups and to try to keep those regionally. So these contractors aren't, racing back and forth all the way across town to service buildings. So with that, I'll turn it over again to Lori for 4.05, which is award of a general contract to energy efficient equipment doing business as Evolved Lighting Solutions.
Excuse me. So this is very similar. Again, we advertised on the 6th and 13th of April. This is the notice that was in Ohio MBE. This was on our website. What I didn't clarify for you both, there are 30 buildings between these two packages. That was another reason for splitting this apart. We did not tell the bidders what schools they were. We just gave them the counts because it really is a labor issue. And we did not want contractors trying to get into 30 schools in a 2-week period. This is our pre-bid meeting agenda. Again, these were our attendees. In this case, Evolved Lighting, energy efficient equipment, doing business as Evolved Lighting was our low at over 33% below estimate. So we are recommending award of contract in the amount of $349,839.22 be awarded to energy efficient equipment. This again is coming from Operation Fix-It funds and the half-mil maintenance fund for the facilities master plan buildings. This is their contract. This is their MBE, their LEDE form, committing to 20%. And this is Terry's sign off. Are there any additional questions? Oops.
Okay, great. With no questions or comments, entertain a motion to approve project 21004, group two.
I motion to approve. And thank you, Lori, for all of your hard work getting these done.
Absolutely.
Second.
And a second to approve project 21004, group two. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Okay, thank you much. The project has been approved. Thanks again, Lori.
All right, well, that takes us to 4.06, I want to be clear about this one too. So 4.06 does not, by the rules of NSDP, need to come to this body for your recommendation before it goes to the board. But we wanted to very strategically bring this piece of legislation through because we know there will be some concerns based on the district's lighting upgrades that were done 2 years ago. So I'm gonna guess many of you have heard the stories that when we did similar work 2 years ago, while the projects were very successful, we did have issues with a handful of fires that occurred in buildings as a result of, I think in reality, what happened is that transformers did not get properly removed or bypassed. And as a result, we had some lamp transformers that overheated and melted into plastics and resulted in those fires. So 4.06 is a contract for project management services with Ascension Construction Solutions. This is a firm that we've started doing business with a few years ago. And what we know, given the scale and scope of this project, is that we simply don't have enough of our own resources to manage all of this work in the field. And so this really is a staff augmentation for this very specific group of two contracts to make sure that we have additional manpower for project management, both to look at that quality control. So I'll let Lori get into some of the details on that when she presents this one, as well as driving the schedule, because these projects need to be complete for the start of school. So with that, I will turn it over to Lori.
There is actually not a slideshow presentation to go with this one. We're just talking you through this. Ascension Construction Services specializes in owner's representation and being an extra set of eyes and ears for various entities around town. They are an LEDE company. Very, very smart, very bright. They have already worked with us to set up pre-construction services on this one and held the meetings and are forcing the contractors to get their schedules and their safety plans in, because we will not repeat what happened 2 years ago. So contractors will be required to remove all the ballast, which is, they have to be bypassed because they cause the new lamps to overheat. So they have to be removed. We're not bypassing them, we're removing them. They have to, as part of the safety plan, watch them for a couple of hours afterwards to make sure they don't catch on fire. And she's driving the schedule. She's forcing them to come up with schedules and she's holding their feet to the fire to make sure they maintain those schedules. They will be tracking distribution of our stockpile of LED lamps to the contractors. We're not going to say, here's 10,000 lamps, go forth and do. We're going to say, here are the lamps you get for this building. And we sign them out. So we know how they're being installed. Again, this is small for you guys, but we want to make sure that everybody understands that we have no intention of repeating what happened a couple of years ago. And we are doing everything that we know how to do to avoid that. Do you have questions for me?
Okay, no questions or comments? Thanks, Lori. What I like to do is approve this again by the action item number, because it has the same project numbers as the other two, even though it's a different service on those projects, if that's okay, right? Okay, great. Well, with that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve action item 4.06 on the May 27th, 2021 agenda. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Well, I need a motion. Sorry, ahead of myself.
Motion to approve.
Coffee's
Second.
running out. Motion, second.
Second.
All right, great. Thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded to approve action item 4.06. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, thank you much. The motion has passed and the project has been approved.
All right, thank you. This takes us to 4.07, which is our final action item for the day. And this is the one that we kind of started with in terms of construction manager at risk. So this is award of a contract for construction manager at risk services to Turner Construction for phase 11 of the HVAC overhauls. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kurt, and he will walk you through this contract.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this is the one we've talked so much about today. So first off, we'll start again with the advertisement. Again, it's the same one we had for the EOR.
Hey, Kurt?
Yes.
Are you screen sharing? Because I'm not seeing anything on my end right now.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. So again, this is the advertisement that we've seen earlier with the EOR there. Just list our dates and our Zoom sites. Uh-oh. Okay. Next up, we have the MBE and our district's website. This was the RFQ that was sent out. Again, very similar to the EOR, had a brief project description with the sites and a little brief history on those. And again, the scope services piece. This was the informational meeting agenda. Again, lists all the submission deadlines and instructions. And again, a overview of the scope of the facilities. So here's our sign-in sheet. So we had good representation from the CMRs in town, which was good to see. So we were pretty excited about that. This is the statement of qualifications for the selected firm, which was Turner in partnership with Ascension. Here's the short list letter, selection letter with the firms that submitted, and then our shortlisted firms.
Hey, Kurt, real quick, I'm gonna go back one. Well, here's the same list again. So I just want to point out, so we were really pleased to see that almost all the major construction managers in town submitted their qualifications for this project. So we were incredibly pleased that in spite of the fact this may not be the most logical place to use CMR, they were interested, and we're certainly very excited to see them.
So here's the scoring breakdown from the RFQ, excuse me, phase, with the short list being Turner Construction, Corner Kokosing, and Pepper Construction. So then the RFP was sent out to those shortlisted firms, again with instructions on their proposal. And again, as Alex pointed out earlier, we did put a prevailing wage piece in there on this. And made sure we put that kind of on Front Street for everybody. This is the final proposal, the team structure of Turner. And then we also have a time allocation that they for their breakout during design and construction, just to give everybody kind of an idea of what that looks like. Up next, we have the best value matrix. So this is how you can see where the teams all stacked up against each other, with Turner having the best value of 74.6, but all pretty close. Up next is the letter from our engineer of record, M Engineering, recommending Turner Construction as the CMR for phase 11. And here's the legislation. And again, we just wanted to highlight the dollar amount. So it's $937,966. But as Alex pointed out before, this is just their pre-construction kind of management costs there. So there will be an additional GMP when that is agreed upon. And again, the budget source is the ESSER 2 funding for that. Here is the working contract. And they have committed to the 20% for the LEDE, as you can see there, and then signed off by Terry Wise. Any questions you guys got for us?
Okay, Kurt, thank you. Being that there's no questions or comments of Kurt on this particular project, again, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve action item 4.07 on the May 27th agenda of the NSDP. Those in favor, signal. Give me a motion. I'm sorry, my bad, guys.
I motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Second.
sir. It's been moved and seconded to approve action item 4.07 on the May 27th agenda. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Great. The project is approved, and thank you very much, guys. I certainly appreciate it.
The only thing I would just reiterate, so I know we said it, but I want to make sure we're saying it in very clear language. And certainly if there's any questions or concerns, we address those now. So I know oftentimes when we come back to amend these contracts, it's really kind of in the context of a change order. It's that scope that we hadn't necessarily counted on, something that has changed. This is quite different. So, you know, you're seeing a contract in front of you for about $900,000. And yet we know the full value of this project is going to be in the range of $10 million plus. And so we will be sending a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price amendment for this contract through. My best guess right now would be in the fall that will represent that full value of that contract. And I just want to make sure everybody's going into this eyes wide open, because I know that typically to change a contract amount and increase it tenfold would be an absolute no-no. But I want to make sure people understand that is the intention of this process. And so I just want to make sure, obviously we'll keep talking about it. I'm not going to surprise anybody with that in one fell swoop, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that concept.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions or comments of Alex or the team regarding that, what he just noted? Yeah, great. Alex, I have a question, and certainly don't mean to get too deep into it. But I'm curious, the ESSER 2 funds, new pot of funds, and it's great that those dollars are flowing. How does the school district access those funds?
So if I'm being completely honest, Mr. Williams, so this part's pretty new to me too. So I'm not even sure I have access to the funds in our accounting system just yet. We've been working on that this week, which is a whole nother different kind of access. I can tell you that there is an entire team here at CCS that is responsible for grants and federal grants specifically. And so I'll be working very closely with that team to make sure that I know there are certain rules and requirements. And I'm not going to pretend to tell you I understand how they work just yet. But thankfully, I've got a whole team behind me that can walk us through that. So I will certainly keep my eye on that. And if there's anything significantly different from what we're used to, I may do a presentation on that at one of the upcoming meetings just to make sure everybody's aware of those as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just so that you know, you're not the only one who doesn't know. So really, it's an amazing thing, the process. I know that some of these funds sometimes are reimbursable after you spend them, but it's asking for the recipient to spend the money up front. And so I'm a little concerned about that sometimes when the numbers get really large. Okay, so we're just curious about it.
Got it. I've got Andrea Richardson at my disposal on this one to make sure in our grants department to make sure that we absolutely play by those rules and make sure we get this money reimbursed.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys keep on doing a good job, please.
Thank you.
Any other items on the agenda? I know we have a representative of the board, Mr. Brown and Mr. Oldham from the administration. And certainly, gentlemen, if there's anything you need to say, please do so. Feel free to do so.
This is Eric. Just wanted to once again thank everybody for their time and their service and their good thoughts about getting this work done. It's a lot of work and a lot coming up. So the schools and our kids will be, expecting a lot. And really thank you. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Certainly appreciate your comments.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Again, I want to ditto and say thank you as well for your service and your guidance that you provide to this NSDP team. And also, I want to publicly thank our capital improvements team for the detailed and thorough work that they do. I know many times in the service industry here, the not so good side, but I want to publicly thank our team members for always going into the details of the weeds, if you will, and getting all the information that's needed to present, and also to keep our public informed and then have the good outcomes that we have. So thank you to everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Odom, for your comments. Being that there's no other business on the agenda, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'm gonna take one of those motions as a second.
Second, yeah.
All right. Guys, thank you so much. It's good to see everyone, and please stay safe until next time. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Have a great
Bye now.
day.
Bye.